So when you say defensives, what does that mean in terms of sectors or regions across Asia?
It means consumer stocks like Nestle. It means telecom companies like AT&T, basically companies that have assured cash flow and good yields. And by the way, we're not advocating sell all growth and put it in defensive, but we do think in an environment where rates are still going to be rising and we don't foresee rate cuts at least until March of next year, that the big rally in the growth stocks, and in some cases it's upwards of 40%, has been excessive, and now you've got the NASDAQ running into its 200-day moving average. So, yeah, we just think the market should cool off a little bit here, and defensives would do better in that kind of environment.
Is that what you got from the July FOMC minutes as well, that we're not going to see the Fed pivot that a lot of market participants have been expecting?
The market seemed to like the minutes on balance because it started going up after they came out. And I think that the interesting thing in terms of potentially less hawkish was acknowledging that there was a feed through into borrowing costs, higher borrowing costs that was a lagged impact, and they didn't want to overdo it. But I think on balance, the minutes, the tone to me didn't suggest a major pivot. So we're still looking, as I said, for more rate hikes to come. I mean, they are more than halfway through. We think the total rate hike cycle this time will be about 300 to 350 basis points, and they've hiked 225 already. But there is more to go.
Mark, we saw that sort of stagnant growth in retail sales in the US. Here in Australia, for example, wage growth continues to lag at less than half the pace of inflation. Does this feed through to some concerns about the resilience of households and spending going forward?
Well, I'm not sure what's happening down under, but the wage growth in America is very strong. The Atlanta Fed tracks wage growth, and I think for people who are staying in their jobs, the number was up about 6% in July over July last year. But if you switch jobs, to my recollection, it was almost a 9% pay increase. So wages in America are rising very strongly. That actually would feed through into inflation. We're not advocating that inflation's going to keep going up, by the way, because we do think oil's going to come down, and we do see house prices starting to soften. But at least on the wage side, Heidi, in America, it's very strong.
Your other view on energy is really compelling as well. Tell me about the reasons why you think that these concerns about an energy crisis in Europe are overplayed at the moment.
Well, to be frank, I hope I'm not insulting anybody. We really think that politicians and journalists are exaggerating the nature of the situation in Europe to get airtime. And in actual fact, if you look at the storage capacity in northwestern Europe, which is really the economic center of that continent, it's above where it has been on average over the last 5 years. I think it's about 78% full. We see very strong supply increases coming out of the U.S. And other places to replace Russia. So that weapon that Russia had, which was, of course, its energy exports to Europe, we think is diminishing rapidly in terms of its value because we do see a big supply response, and we're looking for oil to be about $75 a barrel this time next year.
Given what's happening in the energy space, we are seeing increased focus on renewables, on EVs as well. Mark, how closely are you following what's happening in Sichuan, given, of course, their manufacturing importance for the likes of lithium or polysilicon?
Well, what I would say is that I think the renewable and electric vehicle story will continue to beat expectations as it has over the last 10 years. And a lot of people don't realize that 30% of all new cars in China sold today are electric vehicles, and about 15% of all new cars globally are electric vehicles. And we weren't supposed to hit those numbers for another 3 years. My mother's buying an electric car, and she's in her 80s. So I think the fleet is going to switch very rapidly to electric, and therefore we want to be in the renewable and EV space. We want to be careful what we buy, because there is going to be big oversupply in select areas like batteries, for example. But yes, it's a space we firmly believe in.